what we're trying to do in the Har'el Beit Midrash, we started last year, and the learning was primarily halacha yoredeya for geared towards balbatim who want to study yoredeya and people who want to get smicha. Our vision is really to change orthodoxy to make it, if you ask me, well, how do I see it, say in 10 years from now, to make it much more compassionate, less fear-driven, less boundary conscious, where we can accept people who have a different view of how halacha should be without necessarily saying I agree with it, weakening in a sense, the boundaries that calling something orthodox creates, right? But without watering down the commitment that we have to halacha and to tradition. So this year, in addition to the halacha that we're going to be learning starting at 7 o'clock, and people are welcome to stay to see, to try it out, which is going to be this year the laws of kiddushin and gittin and gerut, which has to do with personal status, which is the core of what I think people are dealing with the state of Israel is dealing with, and to a less degree also abroad, issues of personal status. In addition to the halacha, which will begin at 7, this year I'll be doing Mei Hashiloah. And Mei Hashiloah is something that's very, very close to me personally. It's also extremely important in understanding or providing a basis for a certain philosophy of halacha, and the way halacha works, which is, for most people, probably surprising. It's a little different than what we're used to. And the way I want to do it is not by setting forth, okay, this is what the Mei Hashiloah thinks, A, B, C, D, and analyzing it, but rather doing it from the bottom up. In other words, let's just learn a piece of Mei Hashiloah, and we'll see how his view emerges. Okay. One more word of introduction about the Mei Hashiloah himself. We need a little bit of history of Chassidut here, so we can appreciate the context. Chassidut, of course, started in the 18th century with Baal Shem Tov, and it started as a popular and a populist movement. And when it came from, it was today the Ukraine, tomorrow it'll be Russia, but it doesn't matter, from Ukraine into Poland, the third generation with the disciples of the Maggid, it was still a very popular and populist movement where there was a lot of stress on the tzaddik and on miracle making, and it's called Moifsim. At some point there was a rebellion again, and that was really represented by the Chozeh of Lublin, right? And the Chozeh had a Talmud known as the Yehudi HaKadosh from Pshischa, more known as the Yid HaKudosh from Pshischa, who basically started a rebellion against this and moved Chassidut in a much more elitist and intellectual direction. And he had a Talmud, Simcha Bunim Pshischa, who was unique in the topography of Hasidic Rebbes, in that he actually had a secular education. He knew Latin. He was a pharmacist by trade. He was a very modern person, and as modern as you could be in the late 1700s. Around Reb Simcha ben Pshischa, there collected a unique group of people, which included, the most famous among them was the Kutzker. Okay? And the Kutzker, of course, was known for his severity and certainly his elitist attitude. They used to ask him to do moifsim, to do miracles. So he said, I have no problem in being Mechayim Mesim. I have a problem with being Mechayim B'chayim. Right? So that was the group of people. So you had the Kutzker, you have Reb Mordechai Yosef Meishbitz, you had Reb Yitzchak Meir Migur. So this is what became Polish Hasidut started around, so to speak, around the table of Reb Simcha Bunim, to paraphrase a book that Har'el was crucial in putting out, around the Maggid's table, which talks about a couple of generations earlier, but around the table of Reb Simcha Bunim, so you had the Mei Hashiloah. The name of the book comes from Simcha Bunim told Reb Mordechai Yosef that his depths are like the Mei Hashiloah, so that's where the name of the Sefer comes from. Regarding Reb Mordechai Yosef Ishbitz, after Simcha Bunim passed away, the KiTetzei took the mantle, and they were together for 13 years. And then there was an extremely acrimonious break between Reb Mordechai Yosef and the KiTetzei, which is legendary in the history of Polish Hasidut. Eli Wiesel writes about it, I think, in Souls on Fire. He writes about the episode, of course, with it's not a historical document, it's more like a literary flair, but nobody knows exactly what it was about. But it was a terrible break that even got violent between the Hasidim, the way terrible breaks happen in the Hasidic world. In any case, so Mordechai Yosef, I think that the break is about, the Mordechai Yosef was a much more gentle personality than the KiTetzei, and he didn't like the severity. And it comes out in some pieces where he talks about the kas of the tzaddik. When a person is righteous, they might lose touch with other people's flaws. They don't tolerate their own imperfections, and therefore they don't really have that much consideration for other people's imperfections, and it makes them sometimes a little hard to be around. So that was the KiTetzei. And the Mei Hashiloah was a much more gentle and forgiving personality, and you can see that at times when he talks about the characteristic that a tzaddik has, is that he's impatient and he's full of kas. Anyway, that's just the history of the Mei Hashiloah, where it's part of a movement that moved Hasidut away from the original folklorish aspect to making it something much more considered intellectually, but not letting go of the reworking of Kabbalah that Hasidut did, and we'll see how that plays itself out in some of the things we're going to learn. Okay? So this piece, which I would like to do, I hope some of you printed it out, right? But for those, everybody has? Okay. I didn't intend on doing necessarily a piece on the parsha, but what I want to bring out from the Mei Hashiloah is his attitude towards halacha. Okay? So there are reports, it's not clear whether it's true or not, that the book the Mei Hashiloah, which was published, written actually after he died, it was written by one of his grandchildren, was actually burned as a consequence of what was considered heretical doctrines at the time. And if you have the book, on the front page, where the old Shardaf, it was published in Vienna in a non-Jewish Nitpas B'Tfus Adon Adelbert. So it's a non-Jewish publishing house. And the theory is that it was because they couldn't get it published in Poland. The later editions were published in Poland, but that time they weren't. So it was accepted then with a certain amount of, let's say, scandal. Okay? Even though I would like to make this sound mainstream, but we're going to be a little accurate. Okay, so let's begin. So the assumption is, to get used for people who haven't studied Hasidut before, is there's a different way of thinking. It sounds like when Litvaks start studying Hasidus, they think, oh, there are all these nice Hasidic Vertlach, right? What they're saying really has nothing to do with what the Torah is saying, but they're nice ideas, right? So then you say, so why go through the whole process? Just say what you think and let go of there's no real hermeneutics here. There's just, there's the word that you want to say, but it's not true. There's a certain type of thinking, which you call symbolic thinking, where the Torah, and this goes back to the Zohar, where the Torah is telling more than one story. There's the pshat level of the story, and then there's the sod level. I'm not talking about the drash and remez in the middle here, right? And there's the sod level, it's a different story being told. Okay? And in that context, there is an amazingly cohesive system where the symbols, even though symbols change in different contexts, but there is a consistency to it and there is a language. Okay? So I'm not going to spell it out, but you'll see it also how it's used. Okay? All right, so let's just begin without even talking about it. Okay? Ki karei ken sipor lefanecha. Right? So it says shalach tishalach et ha'em ve'et habanim tikach lach. Now, so what he's going to do with this is the aim means one thing and the banim means another thing. It has nothing to do with a bird and its chicks. Okay? This gets translated immediately into something else. Okay? Aim, hainu haklalim shel divrei Torah. Right? The basic principles. Right? Like you say, the mother of all wars. Right? The mother of something. Right? So the aim is the basic principles. It's where the children come from. Where the principles, we derive details from principles. So the principle is the mother. Sometimes the principle is also the father, but in this case, the pasuk is talking about the mother and the banim. So the basic principle is the mother, and the derivatives of that principle, the applications of that principle, right, are the children. Okay? And it's the nature of symbolism that it actually resonates true on different levels. Because if you think about yourself, those of us who are parents, right, if you think about yourself as a parent and how your children, right, I think about your family unit, which is sort of insulated. Nobody from the outside knows what goes on really inside your family, right? But there's an insular environment like a nest, right? And that's where your children grow. But when they get old enough and they go out, you can actually see how things that went on inside express themselves outside. That there's a translation. Sometimes things skip a generation. Sometimes it's things that you didn't intend. Most of the time it's things you didn't intend, right? But the banim are derivatives of the aim. Okay? So now he's talking about that as the aim is divrei Torah, the klalim of divrei Torah, and the banim are the derivatives or the expression or the translation of the divrei Torah. Okay? You could look at it in terms of Torah Shebechtav and Torah Sheba'al Peh also. We have the basic principles, and then how do you translate those principles into practical applications? Right? All these things. This is true when you talk about aim and banim literally, and it's also true when you talk about the Torah, and we'll see what he does with it here. Aim hainu haklalim shel divrei Torah. Ki haklalim shel divrei Torah heim shebechol davar sarich ha'adam levarer et atzmo al pi tlat nikudim le'oraita. You have a principle. Okay? You want to apply the principle. So there's a recognition here that Litvaks deny totally till this very day, is that when somebody wants to interpret something, they always have some sort of agenda. It might be a conscious agenda, it might be a subconscious agenda, but there's a human being here that's performing an interpretation. And that makes the creation of the Torah a human process. There's no objective Torah out there. There's how the Torah is interpreted. That's, in a sense, all there is. So the klalim would be the objective Torah out there, but nobody can see the klalim. What there is the constant interpretation of the Torah, which is the banim. Okay? The parents stay home, right? And it's the banim, right, that go out. So all you see are the banim. You can maybe assume, we try to free ourselves from this, like when our children osim lanu bushot, right? Sometimes you can maybe assume something about the parent from what you see what you see from the children. But all you see are the children. Okay? So when the person interprets, okay, you have to try to make your interpretation. You're taking this abstract principle and you want to apply it into the world. Okay? So you have to the best of your ability, negate your own personal interest. You have to work on saying, I'm trying to get to the truth and not trying to serve my self-interest. Okay? Now, self-interest is something which is very elusive, and it takes a lot of introspection to say, okay, I have an interest here, and let me set it aside. Okay? So you say, anytime you have a principle that you want to apply, Adam tzarich levarer et atzmo. He has to levarer a number of different things that it could possibly mean. It means to clarify, but also means to purify. Right? When you do borer on Shabbos, you have a tarovet of ochel and psolet, of things that are good and things that are bad. So you want to separate them, right? Adam tzarich levarer et atzmo al pi tlat nekudim la'oraytos. There are three things that you have to look at. Hainu sheyivarer shelo yeh b'davar na'aseh shum shemetz neged Hashem yitbarach. First of all, you have to see that it's, so to speak, good for God. V'neged klal Yisrael. Right? And you have to see, is this something which is in the interest of Am Yisrael? V'gam la'adam ha'oseh. And also for yourself. Is this something which is against, is ideally, understandings that I come to should be good for myself also, in the higher form, not in my narrow self-interest, but should be in the interest of humanity, it should be in the interest of Am Yisrael, it should be in the interest of God. So let me just check if this is consistent, because otherwise the way I'm interpreting, the way I take the klal and I make it into a prat, the way I take the aim and I make it into a ben, is colored by things that it shouldn't be colored by. Right? So I have to work on purifying my view. Okay? Hainu shivarer shelo yeh b'davar na'aseh shum shemetz neged Hashem yitbarach v'neged klal Yisrael v'gam la'adam ha'oseh. K'mo shenitba'er b'parashat kedoshim b'pasuk et shabtotai tishmoru. Again, the idea again is that you have the general principles, and you have the avot and you have the toladot. Again, you have this. You don't really notice it, right? But on Shabbat also you have avot, parents, and children, and toladot. And the toladot are similar to the avot, but they're not the exact same as the avot. So they're derived from the avot. So how does that happen? Okay, so he's talking about the same process. Al pia klalim, what?
In this version, it has a different pasuk there.
Yeah, what's that?
It's ish imo v'aviv tira'u.
Right here? Right, it's the same shem. Right. Okay, al pia, right? Al pia klalim, tzarich ha'adam litneheg b'chol ha'inyanim. So now, the klalim, the general principles, are, you could talk about it in terms of the halakha, right? So the general principles of the Torah are normative instructions on how to behave, okay? Now, but the general principles do not always apply. Let's see what he does with this, okay? V'inei ha'klalim ha'ele yichuyvu she'ein ha'adam mechuyav l'msor nafsho af al mitzvah kala. V'zeh haromez shalach tishalach ha'ta'eh. Sometimes, the halach itself states, right, you're not supposed to adhere to the principles, if at the cost of your life, for example. Not only certain things are yehareg v'ayavor. A person is only commanded to sacrifice their lives under certain circumstances. But under other circumstances, the instruction is shalach tishalach ha'ta'eh. Send away the general principles, because it says v'chai b'hem, you have to live according to this specific instance. You throw away, literally, shalach tishalach ha'ta'eh. Right? You do not adhere to the general principles. Okay? Ha'adam mechuyav, she'ein adam mechuyav l'msor nafsho, af al mitzvah kala. V'zeh romez, shalach tishalach ha'ta'eh. Hainu, sheyishalach et haklalim, shelo yashgiach aleihem, rak yimsor nafsho. And he's saying something else here. Yeah.
I had a question how you read before, and it said sometimes you throw away the principles and therefore you have to die. Doesn't it say that the principles dictate, like the broader principles dictate that you don't.
Yeah. It's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me reread what I said before. The general principle would be, the general principle would be that in a certain situation you're not supposed to give up your life, right? But that would be the klal. The shalech to shalech da'ain, the way he's using that is give up. Sometimes you have to not accept that klal and be willing to sacrifice yourself even for the mitzvah kala. And that's going against the principles of gimel averot, ayered vayavor, and nothing else. Right? So sometimes it should be yered vayavor anyway, even though it's against the basic principles that we know. Now this is against the Rambam. Right? There's a machlok between the Rambam, I'm saying now, halacha, right? There's a machlok between the Rambam and Tosfot about whether you're allowed to be moser nefesh lifnim mishurat hadin. Okay? You hear stories. I know that my aunt's father died in Siberia during World War II because he refused to eat treif, and he died because of that. He got sick and he died. Right? And I think that's mesiras nefesh. Right? But if you look at it from the Rambam side, right, it's also to do that. You're only moser nefesh on the three things. And if not, then you're not allowed to. Tosfot says that you're allowed to. Okay? So he's just, as I'm saying this parenthetically, the Mei Hashiloah, even though he's not getting into the halachic discussion, the Mei Hashiloah is consistent with the approach of Tosafot, not with the Rambam. Okay? But he says, "Haklalim ha'elu yichuvu she'ein adam mechuyav lemsor et nafsho al mitzvah kala." They're not chayav. V'zero mei shalech tishalach da'em. Hainu sheyishalach et haklalim shelo yashgiach aleihem, right? Rakim sor nafsho, but you should sacrifice yourself. Yeah.
But if Tosfot's opinion means that there's a day, in other words, he's not going outside. He's not throwing away the clothing, unless he's saying that the Tosfot themselves are throwing away the clothing. In other words, if you brought an example where nobody agreed, where everybody said this is us, and Mei Hashiloah said, sometimes you have to throw away the cloth, that'd be one thing, but this is some machlokes and the Tosfot are not small fry.
Yes and no. You have to see it depends how you understand the Tosfot and the Sugya. It would take us beyond the discussion here.
Would you say that he's saying that the Tosfot are throwing away the clothing and he's following them?
No.
Is he throwing away
He's saying sometimes you have to throw away the clothing. Okay? Because Tosfot understands that the whole mitzvah of Mesirat Nefesh is an issue of Kiddush Hashem. Right? Not the specific severity of the Aveira. So if it's because of Kiddush Hashem, so under certain circumstances, you can read the Kiddush Hashem situation differently. So I can be Mekadesh Shem Shamayim even for lesser things. But he's not committing himself. The Mei Hashiloah is not committing himself to that interpretation. He's saying that sometimes, we'll see, you understand the unique situation to demand a certain type of behavior, even though it's against the general principles of Allah. Okay? So that's not what Tosfot is saying. Let's see. Hainu shalach et haklalim shelo yashgiach alehem rak yimsor et nafsho kimo shematzinu b'Daniel shemasar nafsho al tefila uMordechai shemasar nafsho shelo ishtachaveh leHaman, because it wasn't avodah zarah, it wasn't idolatry there. V'Rabbi Akiva shemasar nafsho al nitzilat yadayim shelo al pi klalei hadivrei Torah. This is obviously a double-edged sword, right? Sometimes it comes out l'kula, but he's talking about it l'chumra. Okay? That would take away his self-interest, right? He's withstanding his own test here, right? It works against his self-interest to go against the klalim, but nonetheless, he's saying there are times you have to go against the klalim. Okay? Ki hevinu, using the term Hevinu is very important, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay? Ki hevinu shamitzvah hazot hayta shayechet lahem b'shorsham. So you have to understand, what's the difference? He's saying now this is the prat. Okay? The prat is that they understood something unique here. that they were uniquely connected, something about Daniel was uniquely connected to tefillah. Or something about Mordechai was uniquely connected to not bowing down to Haman under those circumstances. Now, how does somebody know that? How do you make that? How do you make that call? Right? Somebody put it a different way, a different example. Rav Schlesinger, who used to be the Rosh Yeshiva in Sha'albim many years ago, so he said, how did Avram Avinu know that he should go into the Kivshana Eish? Who told him that he should do that? Right? Because there has to be room for the individual to make the judgment calls. Right? So what are general principles and what are individual instances? Right? What is justice? Okay, let's step back for a second. You talk about halacha, you talk about law. What is justice? Okay? Justice, let's try to define it this way, I think, is the application of an abstract principle into a specific situation without any discrimination. Because the principle applies to everyone, right? Da lo te'da b'rivo, right? Lo taguru mipnei ish. Right? Justice is equally applied. Justice is blind. That's what we mean when we say justice is blind. That's why Yitzchak, who's the symbol for divine justice, is blind. He's not allowed to distinguish between Yaakov and Esav. Right? It's just what is the law. The law is that Esav should get the bracha because he's the oldest one. It doesn't matter if Yaakov might be better, Yaakov might be nicer, whatever, however the Torah reads Yaakov. Now's not time to get into it. But Yitzchak is blind, and he can only do what the law tells him to do. Okay? So the problem with the abstract application, the application of an abstract principle, is that sometimes that leads to very unfair conclusions. Right? That's where you get the distinction between justice and equity. It could be right according to the law, but it's not fair. Because sometimes you have to look at a different type of perspective and say, there's a miscarriage of justice in the application of justice. Right? We have to take something else into consideration. Right? And that's why every legal system has an opt-out. Right? That's why you have chanina. The president, right, the judge, is only allowed to consider the law, theoretically. Right? The president or the head of state or the governor, so they can grant clemency or they can grant a pardon because there's an awareness that the law, the abstract principles, only take you so far. But there are human beings here with unique situations, so you can't anticipate everything. Right? So you have to take other things into consideration, but that's not the job of the judge. Right? There's some other authority. That's midat harachamim. Okay? So he's saying that applies, in a sense, the aim is the mother is the general principle. But there has to be an application of those general principles in an individual way. So sometimes the general principles don't apply. And when the individual comes to a state of awareness that they don't apply, he has to send them away. That's what shalach to shalach to aim is. Okay?
Question?
Yeah.
Would you say that a posek is doing something other than that?
Depends how great the posek is. There are times when the posek, look, it can give you examples where, the issue is very, very interesting. That let's stop this for a second, because what you're asking is a very important question. What does a posek do, right, when he has a certain case in front of him? So, you have to understand, we're not living 100 years ago or 150 years ago where people just did what they did. In a sense, we all ate from the Eitz Hadat. So we're after Freud. Like, let's say we're post-Freud. And what that means is that we all know that people have unconscious things going on and that they have certain goals that they themselves might not be aware of. Right? So then when people behave in a certain way, we naturally, it's so natural, we say, okay, subconsciously, what do they mean by that, right? So, but But 150 years ago in poskim or posek, they just looked at it and they thought about it and they dealt with the sources. And subconsciously, of course, they wanted to. Sometimes it was only subconscious, and sometimes it was unconscious. They wanted to mati the yaguna. They wanted to be mati the chicken for the poor person, right? But when they were looking at it, they were just looking at it, right? But in fact, very often you're shooting the arrow and then you're drawing the target afterwards. I'll give you one example. There are quite a few examples that come to mind, but one example is something that Rav Herzl wrote upon the founding of the state. Okay? The question there then was, what he was writing about was giving the Arabs the vote. How can Arabs vote, or how can they serve in the Knesset? Right? It's clear from, if you read Tanakh, right, or if you look at the basic halacha, that of course minorities can't vote. They're subjugated to you. They can't. They're not free citizens in your state. Right? So it's obvious they can't vote and they can't be Chavrei Knesset, etc., etc. Right? So his approach was as follows. Listen to what he did. Okay? He basically used the clause of Ein Yadenu Takifa. Right? We don't have the authority to do this. But the way he put it is as follows. The state of Israel, you have to understand, he was a Mizrachist, right? Zionism and Jewish sovereignty was important to him. He said as follows. Israel isn't an independent country. The UN gave us this country, and we, together with the UN, run this country. And the UN only agreed to let us run this country, and they let us call it Israel, right? They let us call it a Jewish state. And they only let us agree to do it if we give minorities equal rights. So we don't have the authority to not give equal rights to minorities. Okay? Now, do you think that's what he thought? Every independent state is interdependent. Nobody can do what they want except if you're Putin, right? And if you used to be the United States, right? But most countries can't do what they want. Because there's international relations and all countries are interdependent. Okay? We didn't say that. He said Israel's not an independent state. It's different because we got a mandate from the UN and we only have the right to form a government by virtue of the mandate that the United Nations gave us. What he really, I think, right, he shot the arrow. The arrow is that this is a modern democratic state, and it's not possible to say that minorities can't vote. Right? And the idea of whatever Jewish statehood was 2,000 plus years ago was not built on the modern notion of a nation state. It's built upon a state which is ethnic and religious, not based on citizenship. So you had the palace was Jewish, so it wasn't shaykh to talk about people that weren't Jewish inside your palace, right? But a nation state is based on citizenship. Okay? So, of course, they have to be able to vote and they have to be able to hold office. Right? But he couldn't say that you can't look to halacha and to the Torah as a model of how to run the modern Jewish state. Right? So what he did is he sacrificed, this is what he did. He sacrificed the idea of Jewish sovereignty on the mizbeach of democracy. That's how I put it. Whereas in order to be able to say that Arabs be able to vote, and that was his conclusion before they asked him the question. Right? And he was just using a justification, right? So in that sense, so there's a good example, I think, of a shalech to shalach ta'im. But let's continue here. Okay? But what, in a sense, what say Rav Herzog in the example did subconsciously, the Mei Hashiloah is spelling it out consciously. Okay? He's telling you the truth. Yes.
Are you saying that it's not true what people say that conservative suck fits the north, they can do it once, an orthodox suck and let the chips fall where they may? Are you saying this is...
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Unless you want to say if Herzog was conservative. I'll give you other examples. I can give it to you in Rav Moshe also. Okay. All right, let's... I think the labels, conservative, orthodox, I don't think they're helpful here. I think they actually... they obstruct the ability to understand the thing itself by putting a label on it. Okay, but let's assume he certainly wasn't conservative. Okay.
You raised a question
Yeah.
before asking a question about how a person knows that.
So that's why he talks about berurim. But let's continue. That's why he talks about these clarifications that a person has to do for themselves. Okay. So he says as follows: Ki hevinu, okay, shamitzvah azot hayta shayechet lahem bishorsham. Okay, let's take this a little bit. Ki l'chol adam shayach mitzvah miyuchedet befrat. This is a common Hasidic idea. Everybody has their own mitzvah that they feel closer to, that talks to them more. It's very not Litvish, right? The Litvish thing is that the Shulchan Aruch applies to everybody all the time the same way. That is really what Midat Hadin is, right? There's no differences between the people. We're all expected to adhere the same way to the same law. The Torah is the same for everybody. Okay? So the Mei Hashiloah is saying that Torah is not the same for everybody. It's not even the same for two different people, and may not even be the same for yourself that it was 5 minutes ago and the way it is now. Ki l'chol adam shayach mitzvah miyuchedet befrat, kamo shenitba'er bekama mekomot. Okay, I want to digress. This isn't really a digression, and the second piece that I have printed here is something from the Reb Tzadok HaKomi Lublin, who was one of the foremost Talmidim of the Mei Hashiloah. Okay. He wrote as follows. He quotes a Zohar. He says, "V'sifran shel tzadikim shomrei Torat Hashem, hu ha-sefer Torah." Okay. We'll see what he means by this. He talks about the significance of a Sefer Torah as the book of tzadikim. What does he mean? Dichtiva umancha l'chol adorot la'asot et kol divrei Torah hazot. Okay, so the Torah is the book through which, this sounds frum, right? It's the Torah, it's the eternal Torah that is supposed to be mikuyam throughout generations. But now listen. Kayadua d'shishim ribo otiot haTorah. It's well known, it's the Zohar, that says there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. Keneged shishim ribo nishmot b'nei Yisrael, shehem atzman otiot haTorah. So there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. He writes elsewhere, he counted them. There aren't really. It's closer to 300,000, but he said, just for the record, and he says it doesn't matter. Right? It's the idea that matters. Because you can break up the letters in a different way. A chet is 2 zayins, etc. It doesn't really matter. That's not the point. Okay? So I don't want somebody to come to me next week and say, I counted them, I did a sur, okay? He knew that it wasn't exact. But the idea is, okay, that there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. Keneged, which is 600,000 nishmot b'nei Yisrael, shehem atzman otiot haTorah. Okay? And he has a way of remembering this, is that Yisrael, Rashi Tevot Yisrael, is Yesh Shishim Ribo Otiot LaTorah, is Yisrael. Okay? That's just a way to remember it in case you want to remember it. Okay? So what does that mean? So I'll tell you. In yeshiva, I've been in the Gush for many years, this is what they said. Okay? Which is something that's true, but it has nothing to do with what the Reb Tzadok is talking about. What they said is that you can find what you like in the Torah. There's some people that like learning Dinei Mamonot. There's some people that like learning Yoredeya. There's some people that like learning Machshava. There's some people that like learning Chassidus. There's some people that like learning Tanakh. You can find what you like in the Torah. Okay? And that's what it means. Everybody has an oath in the Torah. You can identify. You can always find something that you identify with. Okay? That's true. But it has nothing to do with what the Zohar and what Reb Tzadok mean. What they mean is as follows. If I am a letter, because it's not talking about my ability to find something in the Torah, he's saying that B'nai Yisrael hein atzman otiot haTorah. So what is a letter in the Torah? What is that? A letter in the Torah is a piece of divine revelation. It's like a part of a mosaic, right? A little stone out of the mosaic. So you have the Sefer Torah, which is made up of the otiyot. Every person is an ot in the Sefer Torah, means that every person is an instrument in the way God reveals himself in the world. God reveals himself in the world through me. But not only through me, but through who I am. Right? So I am a oat. Right? God doesn't reveal himself in the world through one oat. He reveals himself through the entire Torah. So when you have the entire Torah, or if you have, in this model, all of Am Yisrael, so God's reflection in the world is through the amalgamation of all the individuals of Am Yisrael together. That's God in the world. Okay? So every person is a little piece of divine revelation. I'm more of a din person, or I'm more of a rachamim person. Right? So this is what it means when it says, for example, that Avram Avinu is chesed. You hear that a lot. What does that mean? It means that if you want to understand an aspect, so to speak, of God's personality, of God's unconditional love for his creations, Avram Avinu is a projection of that. Okay? It's almost as if God had a dream, and he dreamt about Avram Avinu. And then you sat down, you put God on the couch, and you interpreted the dream. You said, oh, Avram Avinu, this is you, this is part of your personality. Because everything that happens in our dreams are really just projections of our own personalities. Right? So Avram Avinu is chesed. He expresses one of the otiyot, so to speak, in the Torah. Okay? So when the Mei Hashiloah says that everyone has a mitzvah miyuchedet bifrat, what he's saying is that and how do you know that? Because you feel connected to it, if you're conscious of it. He's saying that consciousness of a subjective connection to the Torah that you have is the divine revelation of who you are, and it's the divine revelation of that letter in the Sefer Torah. What that does is that under certain circumstances where the Beirur has been applied, it means that what you feel to be true very deeply after searching and after the introspection is divine revelation. It's not, this is going to guide me because this is what I think and it's me. It blurs, when I say, this is really pshat in the saying, if I say you're a letter in the Sefer Torah, what have I done? I've blurred the distinction between being human and being God. God expresses himself in the Sefer Torah, but if you're the oath in the Sefer Torah, so that blurs the distinction. And that means that my intuitions, under certain circumstances, are divine revelation. Now let's continue here. Shayach mitzvah miyuchet befrat k'po shenitbar b'kama kamot. V'zeh perush et habanim tikach lach. What is banim? Hainu shetashgiach rak al binat halev. Here's the play with the words. Ben, it comes from the word bina. Because now you might think this is just a little. This is a vort, right? This is one of the examples. Oh, ben, son, child, and bina, wisdom. Oh, they sound the same, so he's tying them together. No, see, the aim. Okay, we have to do some basic Kabbalah now. Okay, in 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to teach you some basic Kabbalah. We're going to talk about God's name, the Shem Havaya, and how that will illuminate what we're talking about here. God's name. Just accept this as given. I can bring you the sources from the Zohar at some other time. Right? God's name, Yud, He, Vav, He, encapsulates the 10 Sfirot. Whereas Yud is Chachma. I'll just say it, right, and then I'll try to explain it. Yud is Chachma, He is Bina, Vav is the next 6 Sfirot of Chesed, V'ur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and the last He is Malchut. Okay? What does that mean? Let's go back. It means that the Shem Havaya, which is existence or being, has within it the entire creative process. And Chachma, okay, is a Yud because it's the first point of realization of anything. It's like the flash of, oh, right? That's Chachma. And where does Chachma come from? If you've ever experienced, I'm doing this fast, but try to plug into this. When you've experienced, where does anything begin? It begins with an idea. Where does the idea come from? If I ask you, you experience an idea, some sort of flash of insight. If I ask you, where does that come from? Experientially, not, don't give me Freud, it comes from my subconscious. But where do you experience it as coming from?
Nowhere.
What?
Nowhere.
Nowhere, right? It just, we say, it popped into my head out of nowhere. That's chokhmah me'ayin timatzeh. Chokhmah comes out of nowhere. And that's bria, that is, for Kabbalah, that's the bria yesh me'ayin. The yesh me'ayin is that first point, which is the yud. Right? The first point that comes out of nowhere. Okay? Now I'm using this very carefully. The point is the zera of the man. It's the semen. And that's why we talk about seminal ideas. Okay? And that's the yud. The yud goes into a vessel, which is empty, which is a dalid. Dalid is emptiness. And it turns it into a hay. That's bina. Bina is the seminal idea turns into a concept, conception. Bina is the primordial womb. The little yud in the hay is the zera in the dalid, and that's the first hay. Okay? That gives birth to banim. Right? So chachma impregnates bina. That's why the story of creation is a story of God giving birth to himself. Chachma impregnates bina and gives birth to a vav, to a son. You don't have to be Freud to know that vav is a phallic symbol, is a male symbol. Okay? Vav is a zachar. Okay? And that's chesed v'ort v'eret netzachod yisod. That's koma shleima shel ha'adam. Okay? Ches is the right hand, v'or is the left hand, tefer is the torso, etc. Now let's get, and then hey is the chibur between the man and the woman, which is again the hey. The last hey is a dalet with a yud in it, or with a vav in it. Okay? Let's leave that. Let's go back to what he's saying. The banim, right? Shalech tishalach et ha'ein. Send away the original concept. Send away the primordial idea that existed, that popped into your head out of nowhere. But now you're going to have to apply it. The banim are bina because they are translations of the seminal idea. So a ben is lashon bina because it comes from chokhmah. So the klalim, the general principle is chokhmah. But when you translate it, because you have to, well, the beginning of translating something is understanding it and internalizing it. That's bina. So bina is the translation of chokhmah. So shalech tishalach et ha'eim v'et habanim tikach lach is kishata mevin shetzarich l'shalech et ha'eim tishalech et ha'eim. Ki hevinu, it goes back, I'm going back a line. The word hevinu is very specifically chosen. Ki hevinu shamitzvah azot haya shayachet lahem mishorsham. Ki lechol adam shayach mitzvah miyuchedet befrat. It's individual. K'mo shenitber b'kama komot. Ve'et habanim v'zeh sheperush ve'et habanim tikach lach. Hainu shetashgiach rak al binat halev. Because the seat of bina is the heart. Chachma comes from the rosh, from the head, and bina is in the heart. So the yud is the head, and the hey is the heart. Okay? V'ze'om ramzal ki yikareh. Now he has to. This was very dangerous what he just said. Okay? Just go by your heart. Just go by your intuition. Okay? Did anybody here ever read Brothers Karamazov? Do you remember the Grand Inquisitor? And who remembers the Grand Inquisitor? Let me just get this. No? So few people? All right, the story there is an amazing story. And it goes to what the Mei Hashiloah was talking about. In the Brothers Karamazov, there's a story within a story. One of the brothers writes a short story. And the story is like this. That Jesus comes back a second time to a little town in Spain during the Spanish Inquisition. And because he makes miracles, and because he has this charisma, so people start collecting around him. Right? So he gets called into the Inquisition. Right? And he's interviewed by the Grand Inquisitor. and the Grand Inquisitor is going to burn him at the stake. And the Grand Inquisitor looks at him and says, I know who you are. But you have to understand things have changed since you were here the first time. Right? We've built a church, we have society, and people want to be free. But you know how and you want it to be free. But we have learned that freedom is dangerous and it's destructive. So I'm going to have to burn you at the stake. So he burns Jesus at the stake. The Spanish Inquisition burns Jesus at the stake. That's the story of the Grand Inquisitor. Okay? What you have here is the inherent is the tension between the klalim, what's good for society, what's good, what needs the general principles. But when you talk about the individual and how that gets translated into, in a specific case, where that general principle may no longer apply and has to be sent away, that's already dangerous because it leads to anarchy, okay? Which the Spanish Inquisition wanted to avoid at all costs. Okay? Now, the Mei Hashiloah was from, okay? And he says as follows, V'zeh omram zal ki yikareh prat lemezuman. You can't plan it. You can't put the aim and the banim together in order to send away the aim. It has to just happen that way. You cannot premeditate breaking the klalim. If you find yourself in the situation, because then that shows that that situation was divinely orchestrated. And then you can read it as a divine revelation. But if you concocted the situation to do away with the klalim, then it's inauthentic. Ki karei she'asur lahamtzi et atzmo lamakom kazeh lisaken et atzmo. You can't say, I want to be moser nefesh even for the smallest mitzvah. So I'm going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to have this choice. That you can't do. Rak kishi'uneh liyado mikoma v'lo lahamtzi et atzmo. Only if it happens that way, but not to create that situation. K'mo she'mevuar Bagmara ha'omer al ken tzipor yagiu harachamecha. Ki Hashem yitbarach yachol lo'shia shelo yitztarech ha'adam af lezeh. God can save you before that. You should never be in that situation. Al ken tzipor yagiu harachamecha means God can save you from the necessity of being mishaleach the aim. If you're living in a safe existence, right, then you'll never have to be Mishaleach the aim, Rabbanim tikach lach. And God can do that also. Right? But if it happens that there's, what does he talk about? A conflict between your very deeply held intuitions and what the Klalei Halacha are. So that puts you in between a rock and a hard place. That's Avram Avinu with the Akedah. Right? What do you do? So sometimes he's not telling you exactly how you know. He tries with these three nikudim, the oraita in the beginning, but there's a beirur, and this is the, in a sense, this is the Nishtav Shabbos Geret part. This is the warning that comes along with this, that a person has to be totally authentic, and this is where you see the similarity, where it's like cuts, right? That you have to be real. You can't just say, I want to do this, and I'm going to create this situation to do this or to do that. But at the same time, there's an awareness that you do have an intuition in your lave which can be a divine revelation, which at times demands from you, it demands from you at times to transgress the klalim. Right? That's what you have here. So you have what he has as a fundamental assumption here, which is basically understanding how you understand halacha, which again, this is just only one example of this, is that you have general principles, but Ritzon Hashem, as expressed in your intuitions, can be very, very different at times. And when you have that conflict, at times you have to decide in favor of your intuition, despite the sacrifice that might entail. Yeah.
Because of his focus on a sort of a circumstance that arises, do you think that he's trying to limit this to sort of specific instances in life, or to actual like a permanent throwing away of talim, or sort of? No,
there's no such thing. And that has to do with God is infinitely present in every moment. So every moment is infinitely other than every other moment. So just because something was one way one time, it's no indication that it was like that. It should be like that another time. it's a longer discussion. Okay, I'll take one more question. Yeah.
When he's discussing the same thing in Parashat Kedoshim, he says something really important, which I think is really missing
Yeah.
here, which is he says that the ordinary person needs to do it in that order. First Hashem, then Am Yisrael, then I check to see what my Ratzon is. But the tzaddik, because the tzaddik's Ratzon is aligned with Hashem, he can go the other way around. She or he can start with Ratzon Hashem. And that's really, really important, that you've got to also ask yourself, what level am I on?
Right.
To do this business?
Yeah, that's part of the introspection. Okay, we'll stop now. We'll take a break for 6 minutes and then we'll start the